I'm getting married in 2 weeks, and I am totally screwed. What happened there? Before starting the story, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Story Podcast Book. I have to confess this. I feel like I am losing my mind. My fiancée, Sarah, 28 years old female, and I, 34 years old male, have been together for about 6 years, engaged for 1. Our wedding is supposed to happen in just 2 weeks, and I just saw something that is making me doubt if I am making the right decision in my life. Tonight, Sarah and I were enjoying a rare chance to relax at home. Sarah was in the kitchen making dinner, while I was out back working on one of my projects. Anyway, as you do when you're doing hard work, I get thirsty and come back to the house to get a drink, where I see Sarah at the counter preparing dinner and talking on speakerphone. I recognize the voice right away as my brother-in-law, Marty. Now, this is where my brain gets completely messed up. Marty asks Sarah where her sister Evelyn is, as he's been trying to reach her, and she's not replying to texts. And I hear Sarah say to him, "She just left here. She should be there in a half hour or so." It should be mentioned that Evelyn is Marty's wife of 5 years. I have to say that I didn't catch on to what she had just said, because I went into the kitchen and grabbed a glass and asked Sarah, "What was that all about?" And she replies with, "Marty was looking for Evie." I see her texting and I ask her, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm texting Evie that Marty was looking for her." Anyway, I pour myself a drink, sit down, have a sip, and then finally my brain starts to function. First off, I heard Sarah tell Marty that Evelyn was here. Evelyn was not here, and the last time we saw her was yesterday when she came over to work on some last-minute wedding decoration stuff with Sarah. Secondly, why is she texting Evelyn and hoping for a reply when I clearly heard Marty that Evelyn wasn't responding to her texts? Lastly, why the hell would she tell Marty that Evelyn should be there in 30 minutes unless she either knows where she is or she is right now in front of me, texting her to tell her to hurry home? The only explanation that I came up with is that Sarah is lying to Marty about the location of her sister and is probably alerting Evie that Marty will expect her home in half an hour. I then spent probably the next 5 hours creating various scenarios for this behavior, some decent, some downright awful, and replaying them in my head. I wanted really badly to ask Sarah about this, but at the same time, if what I think is going on, then I doubted I'd get an honest answer. Which brings me to about an hour ago. I woke up around 1 a.m. to use the toilet, and I couldn't resist the temptation to check Sarah's phone. We both know each other's pins, so this wasn't a hard thing to do. Anyway, I grabbed the phone, retreated to the bathroom, and unlocked it, and yup. It was exactly what I was scared of, and probably what most of you were anticipating. Sarah's sister Evelyn has been having an affair for about 6 months with a coworker, and Sarah has been helping Evelyn hide it for almost that entire time. There are literally hundreds of texts between them discussing it, discussing the coworker, discussing sex stuff, really humiliating things about my brother-in-law, just stuff that makes my stomach turn. And here is my soon-to-be wife going along with all of it without blinking an eye. I snapped some pictures of the whole conversation, put the phone back in its place, and ran to my home office to spill it all out on Reddit just to keep myself from screaming out loud right now. I am completely and utterly doomed. Reddit, I can't marry Sarah. I just can't. There's no way she can justify helping her sister cheat on Marty and hurting not only him, but their little girl too. And then there's this. Me, my family, Sarah, and her family have all invested a huge amount of money into a wedding that's supposed to happen in about 2 weeks. There's no chance we're getting any of that money back. And on top of that, I feel like such an idiot. How did I not see what kind of person she was? And what am I supposed to do now? I can't marry her? I absolutely can't. But I still love her. She's gorgeous and fun and sweet, and I thought we had a great future ahead of us. She's never done anything wrong to me, but I just can't look at her the same way now. It's like a big ugly blotch on an otherwise beautiful painting. I just don't get how I messed up, and now I'm terrified to do what I know I have to do. I feel like I want to throw up or smash something. Guys, you don't have to persuade me to not marry Sarah. That's clear. The wedding is off. I'm just trying to figure out what to do next and gather the courage to do it. There's a lot of pressure on me from the expectations of everyone, but I'm not going to give in to it. I just am not looking forward to dealing with the consequences, and I'm more than a little pissed that I'm in this situation. It's 5 a.m., I have work in 3 hours, and I'm running on a few hours of sleep. I'm going to take a shower and head to work a bit early to avoid Sarah and think about this. Thanks to the kind people here, And a big thumbs down to the jerks who keep saying I should find out whatever good reason my soon-to-be ex-fiancé had for this nonsense. I arrived at work around 7. The office was empty, so I decided to start ripping off the Band-Aid, and I called my brother. He lives in Australia, so he was still awake after having just tucked his kids in. It was tough telling him about this because I know he has spent a lot of money for flights for him and his family to come. But as an older brother, he didn't bring it up once and just supported me. He also made a good point. He said, "You work in a job where you have to deal with frauds and cheats every day. I don't blame you for wanting to have a place to go where this isn't an issue." He was totally right about that, and I understand now why I am reacting so strongly to Sarah's involvement in this lie. He also had a good idea. He was going to take his family to Florida to do some sightseeing and visit the parks. Well, now the kids will have their uncle with them as well. It should be simple since we were going to honeymoon there as well, and we were planning on meeting them for a while anyway. I'll just change everything to be closer to him and his family, and I'll offer Sarah's ticket to either my sister or another family member. I haven't had time to read all the comments, but I have replied to some. Right now, I'm just sort of making myself ill by drinking cup after cup of coffee and trying to distract myself until the day goes on enough where I can contact Marty. Just finished morning stand-up. My stomach is churning from drinking about 2 pots of coffee since I got here so early, and I absolutely cannot focus and concentrate. I feel like I can't do anything really from my side until I tell Marty what I know. So I'm just going to take a sick day and drive over to his house and see if he's there. If not, I'll call him and find him. Marty is a teacher who is on break right now, and Evelyn works a 9 to 5 like me, so chances are good this works out. I reached Marty's house a bit after 10 a.m. He had just laid his daughter down for a nap, and we had a long, honestly awful talk in the kitchen. Basically, he had a feeling this for a few months now, but Evelyn has been very good at hiding her tracks, clearly with the help of Sarah and a few of their common friends. I sadly do not have all 6 months of text messages, just a few dozen screenshots I sent to myself from Sarah's phone, but I gave him what I have and offered to help him however I could. I am a field analyst in the SIU department of a medium-sized insurer specializing in workers' compensation fraud, so I know a few things and a few people. Anyway, I am now working from my laptop in my almost brother-in-law's kitchen trying to save whatever I can. I'm going to have to talk to Sarah tonight and get the word out as fast as I can to my friends and family now that I know I won't mess Marty over. So far, I managed to change most of the honeymoon, although I had a problem with the ticket because Sarah was flying under her maiden name, and our carrier has a surname rule for name changes. Anyway, they did allow me to cancel and get a partial refund and rebook to my sister, who will be joining her 2 brothers and nieces to Florida in a couple of weeks. I'm waiting on canceling the venues until after I talk to Sarah because I don't want to alert anyone until Marty gets his chance to confront Evelyn, but I will definitely be letting my family and friends know this afternoon sometime and plead them to keep it quiet. I'm basically in a panic right now canceling stuff I can cancel, and I'm heading to the bank in a few to open a new account and getting my bills pay sorted out. The finances, some people have mentioned them, but it should be pretty good. The mortgage is in my name since we were not married and I have the bigger income, but Sarah did contribute about $20K versus my $60K towards the down payment. I will have to probably pay her out that money and some portion of the mortgage payments for the last 16 months, but it could be worse. Update the same post. I'm at my friend's place right now, writing this around 8:30 p.m. His name is Mark, and he used to work with me in the same line of work. I'm a field analyst in the SIU department of a fairly big insurance company, which means I'm basically a private detective. I investigate claims that we suspect are fraudulent, especially related to workers' compensation. As I mentioned before, Marty needed my help to find out who Evelyn was having an affair with. The only clue we had was a name. Let's call him Jake. I didn't do much detective work at first. I just searched for him on LinkedIn among Evelyn's contacts, but I found nothing, which was weird. Marty said that Evelyn was going to have drinks with her coworkers tonight and that she wouldn't be back until 9 or 10. He didn't have to spell out what he thought was going on. I got the picture. I agreed to help him, but he had to come with me. I called my friend Mark, told him what was happening, and asked him to join us later. The first thing we did was drop off Marty's daughter at his parents' house. I stayed in the car while Marty went inside. I don't know what he said to them. Then we headed to Evelyn's workplace. It was one of those big commercial complexes with a bunch of generic offices and a huge open parking lot. We looked around until we spotted Evelyn's car, and then I had Marty open it with the spare keys. I gave him a voice recorder and a GPS tracker to put in the car. After that, we drove away, parked a little further, and waited for Mark to show up and for Evelyn to get out of the office. Mark arrived about 20 minutes later and got in the car with us. About an hour later, Evelyn came out with 2 of her friends and a tall, young-looking guy with sandy blonde hair. They were clearly holding hands, and I thought to myself, wow, Evelyn, you're not even trying to hide it. I snapped a few photos from the car and then followed Evelyn as she drove away. I expected her to go straight to a hotel or something, but she didn't. She went to a nice bar and grill in a fancy part of town and parked on the street. I passed by her as she was getting out of her car and walking into the place, and then I found a parking spot for myself and discussed the plan with the others. Mark went in first, since he was a stranger to them. He had 2 tasks. First, to get some incriminating photos of Evelyn and Jake, and second, to cover for me. Marty and I stayed in the car for about 20 minutes until Mark started texting me. He sent me pictures of Evelyn and Jake kissing in front of their 2 female colleagues. Marty was right. They were in on Evelyn's cheating. He was clearly very hurt and angry, especially since one of the colleagues was married and they were close friends with Marty and Evelyn, both having kids around the same age. I asked Marty if he had enough proof, but he said he still wanted to know who the guy was. I tried to convince him that we could find out later, but he was almost pleading with me, so I told him to hang on, texted Mark that I was coming in, and then walked into the bar. The first thing I saw was Evelyn and her group having fun and drinking at one of those high tables near the front window. I paused for a moment, acted surprised, and then shouted to Evelyn, "Evelyn, hey, what a coincidence!" She was obviously stunned to see me, and everyone around her got tense right away. Evelyn quickly introduced me as her sister's fiancé and said that we were getting married in 2 weeks. Everyone congratulated us. I thanked them, and then reached out my hand to the blonde guy and introduced myself with my full name, hoping he would do the same. He did, and I was shocked. His name was not Jake. I introduced myself to the others and then told Evelyn that I was meeting a coworker. I pointed to Mark and then excused myself. I joined Mark and told him the guy's name, and we both took out our phones and searched for him. It didn't take us long to find him. He had social media accounts and a few court cases against him. Everything made sense when we discovered that Jake was his middle name. I was just relieved that Evelyn was not cheating on Marty with 2 different guys. Jake was 26, married, and had a 1-year-old daughter. This was getting worse by the minute. I texted Marty the guy's name and decided to push my luck and told him to wait a few more minutes. I was basically keeping an eye on them at the bar. I was in plain sight of Evelyn and her group, and I could tell that they were not happy about it, and my presence was spoiling their night. That was good. I let this go on for about 10 minutes, and then told Marty to text Evelyn that he was staying at his parents' house with their daughter. It was not long after that until I saw Evelyn taking out her phone, showing it to Jake, and then everyone getting ready to leave. Evelyn came over to me, said goodnight, and invited me and Sarah to dinner this weekend. I smiled and said that sounded lovely, and wished her and her colleagues a good night. Mark and I waited for them to leave, then settled our bill and rushed back to Marty. I was a bit unsure here, because I didn't know what Evelyn had planned. I thought she might have reserved a hotel room and was going there, which would have made things a lot harder and restricted what I could do, but it seems that tonight was supposed to be just drinks at the bar, and it only changed when Marty said he was staying at his parents with their daughter. Evelyn headed straight for home, and we trailed behind her far away and parked down the road. It was not long after that until another car arrived at Marty's driveway, and we saw Jake get out, walk to the door, knock, and be welcomed by Evelyn. They went in together. Now, it was about 7:30, and I had my own plans for tonight, and I felt, as a friend, I had done all I could for Marty, and he could take care of the rest himself. I mean, I was sorry for the guy for sure, but I didn't want to get more involved in this mess than I already was, and being his sidekick while he faced his cheating wife was too much for me given my situation. Marty said it was okay, that he would handle it himself. "You go, Marty." He went to Evelyn's car, got my stuff, and we said goodbye. That was almost 2 hours ago. I got one text from Marty saying it was over, and he was going to his parents' house for real this time, but my phone has been quiet, so I have no idea what's happening with Evelyn, and I've been at Mark's since then. I think that's the end of my role in Marty's story. If he was smart and followed my suggestion, he was recording with his phone when he entered the house. I'll find out later. Anyway, my main concern now is to go home and tell Sarah that the wedding is off. She's almost certainly going to react badly. There's no doubt about it, But, like I said, I just can't marry her right now. I don't know what the future has in store for us, or if we will break up or not, but we are definitely not getting married anytime soon. Also, for those who keep asking, why didn't you talk to her first? Why didn't you confront her? I have to say, are you kidding me? She blatantly lied to her brother-in-law, who she has known for about 10 years, and supposedly thinks is a wonderful husband and father. Maybe you are gullible enough to think that someone can lie that easily to someone they are supposed to care about and then tell you the truth, but I'm not like that. Until that moment, I never had any reason to doubt Sarah or not trust her, but she was literally dishonest in front of my eyes, and I'm supposed to ignore it or expect her to be truthful to me? I guess you don't know what it feels like to have your whole perception of someone change in an instant. It's confusing and, honestly, a bit scary. I'm actually proud I kept my cool and followed my gut instead of questioning her right away, because it led me to the truth. It would have been very simple for her to lie to me and then erase those text messages, and if she had done that, then I would never have seen the awful things she said, never realized how she can be so deceitful and hypocritical, and never understood how little I actually knew about her. I'm heading home to talk to Sarah. I'll update later to let you all know what the final outcome is. Don't expect it to be a happy one. Here is another update for you guys. There is so much to tell you, and a lot of things have happened. And to be honest, most of them have been pretty bad. Actually, they have been awful, but I'll get to that later. First of all, I didn't leave Mark's house until very late that night. Sarah was aware that I was out with him for some business talk, but she had no clue that the business was actually her sister's affair. But it was getting too late, mostly because I was scared to go home and confront her. After Mark gave me 2 or 3 motivational speeches, I finally got up and texted Sarah that I was on my way and drove off in my car. As I mentioned in the previous update, I was shocked when I arrived because Evelyn was sobbing on the sofa with Sarah. I didn't notice Evelyn's car when I parked, so this was the last thing I expected. I hesitated for a second and almost walked out. This was not how I planned this to happen, and I knew that Evelyn being there was going to make a bad situation 1,000 times worse. But I had a schedule that I wanted to follow. I had friends to inform and wedding plans to cancel, and the clock was ticking in my mind. When I stepped into the room, Sarah and Evelyn both looked at me, but they didn't say anything. I just looked back, raising my eyebrows. The moment passed, and Evelyn resumed crying, Sarah resumed comforting, and I let the silence linger for a while as I thought. It seemed that Marty hadn't told them that I helped him expose Evelyn's affair. I decided to act clueless, not for any specific reason, but because I wanted to see how Sarah would react. I sat down on a recliner, put my laptop bag on the floor, and took out my phone. I pretended to be busy with it, and then asked them, "What's happening?" Evelyn just kept crying, but Sarah looked at me and said, "Marty is leaving Evie." Well, duh. I knew that already. I decided to go ahead with the obvious question. "Why?" I asked her. Sarah stopped comforting Evelyn for a second and looked at me. I could almost see her face change. Imagine the look a 5-year-old makes when you tell them to eat their spinach or finish their peas. Evelyn gave Sarah a look that I didn't need to be a sister to understand, and there was a long pause until Sarah finally said, "She was unfaithful to him." Now, I have to say, this answer blew me away. This was not what I was expecting at all. Sure, the more cynical readers here might think, well, the secret was out, so there's no point in denying it. And yes, that's true. But it's also true that she could have just as easily acted clueless, or even said it another way, like, Marty claimed Evie was cheating, instead of basically admitting it to my face. Maybe I'm being picky here, but it's part of my job to pay attention to not only what people say, but how they say it. Evelyn was not happy about this. She kind of sank into the couch a bit and did this weird mix of a sigh and sob at the same time. I wanted to press on, go for the kill, so to speak, but I must have stuttered a bit. Sarah probably thought it was shock, and well, she would have been right in a way, just not how she thought. "Did you know?" Sarah didn't say anything, she just nodded, her hand still stroking her sister's shoulder. I didn't wait and asked for the obvious follow-up. "How long?" The answer came back a lot easier than I expected. 6 months. I was shocked by how easily she confessed to it. Evelyn was shocked too. She slapped her sister's hand away, and I think even Sarah was a little shocked at hearing it out loud. I leaned back in the recliner and rubbed my face. Time to rip the rest of that Band-Aid off. "We're not getting married." There were 2 looks, like stunned goats, and a chorus of, "Huh? What?" from both sisters. I stood up and repeated myself. We're not getting married. I won't marry someone who would hide cheating, especially for half a year. Sarah jumped off the sofa and stretched out her arms. The body language was, "You've got to be kidding me," but I just crossed my arms. "I'm not kidding. I hate this. All of it. I hate that you were part of this, and I can't marry you when I feel like this. It would be a disaster." The tears started flowing, and even Evelyn did that thing with her mouth that looks like a fish gasping for air. There were sobs from Sarah, accusations of not caring for her, pleas to my sense of responsibility, to the wasted money, the trouble to all our friends, the shame of it all. It was honestly nothing I hadn't already considered, but it definitely sounded different hearing Sarah say it through body-shaking cries. It was then I probably made a big blunder. Well, maybe not, because I have no clue how long Marty would have kept my role in everything secret. But in an attempt to persuade Sarah of the seriousness of it all, I said, "Look, I already called off the honeymoon. It's over." I realized it was a mistake the moment it came out of my mouth, and the reaction was almost instant. Evelyn, to her credit, had always been pretty sharp, which is probably how she had managed to deceive her husband for so long. I could almost see the understanding hitting her when she pieced it all together with my visit to the bar earlier that night. She shouted, "You scoundrel!" and charged at me. Now, I'm not a big guy, but I'm not weak either. But the force that Evelyn threw herself at me had me stumbling backwards, and I barely had time to get my hands up before she started scratching my face with her nails. I almost dropped the phone I still had in my hand, but still managed to shove her away and yell very loudly, "Evelyn, back off! Sarah, get your sister in check!" Evelyn made another move for me, but surprisingly, Sarah did exactly what I told her to and grabbed her sister's waist and held her still. I glared at Evelyn and shouted, "Leave this place right now or I am calling the cops!" waving my phone in the air to show her I meant it. Sarah pleaded with both of us to calm down. She said to me, "OP, she has no place to stay right now, and Marty took her car keys." That explained why there was no car in the driveway, but I didn't care. I was completely done with Evelyn, and I was going to make sure she got the message. I stormed into my home office and locked the door and rang the police. I told them I had been assaulted by my fiancé's sister and had locked myself in my office, that I was bleeding from my face. Evelyn had clawed me pretty bad along the inside of my left eye, and that my vision was fuzzy, and I feared for my safety. I even told them that I had recorded the whole incident on my phone. Just as I was wrapping up my conversation, Sarah comes banging on the door. "OP, please come out. We have to talk about this. And please, I love you. Don't do this. We don't have to do this." And even, "Evelyn is sorry. She wants to say sorry." I'm pretty sure that last one was a lie, but Sarah was obviously losing her cool. I didn't answer her, and her attempts to coax me out of the office stopped probably right when the police showed up to our front door. I could hear Sarah talking to them, and I decided to come out. The cops were two males. One of them looked younger than me, maybe around Sarah's age, and the other one looked older and more fed up with life in general. I introduced myself, pointed at Evelyn, stating that she attacked me, and offered to show the cops the video I made. The younger one asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. He asked me again if I wanted to press charges. I said yes again. At this point, both cops looked at each other, and before the young cop could open his mouth again, I said, "Yes, damn it. I want to press charges. I have video proof, and this is going to court, or else I'm going to call up your boss and ask him to come down and do it himself." I think they were pretty shocked that I knew his name. Not that we are buddies or anything, but given my line of work, I spend plenty of time working with local law enforcement, and I have met most of the top brass or talked to them on the phone a couple of times in the last few years. Honestly, at this point, I was getting pretty heated, and while I get what these guys were thinking, I don't agree with it at all. Facts are facts. Sure, I might not be dying on the floor, but Evelyn attacked me in my own home, and I wanted her out. Thankfully, the situation didn't quickly escalate, and the two officers handcuffed Evelyn and put her in the back of the patrol car. She was wailing and crying like some sort of babbling lunatic the whole time. Sarah wasn't much better. She just kept going, "No, please, no," over and over again. At this point, the younger cop came back and asked us if everything was okay here. I just told them I was going to bed. He asked Sarah again, and she didn't immediately answer, so he goes, "Is everything okay here, Mom?" It was obvious what he was looking for. At this point, I really hated this guy, but I kept my mouth shut. Sarah finally realized that the cop was talking to her, and she just nodded at him. Obviously, the guy is not happy with this, and starts to ask her again, at which point I cut in and say, "If you want to go on a fishing trip, you might want to do it over there on the lawn where my doorbell camera isn't filming you." I think at this point I had gone too far with this guy one too many times, but what could I do? I think I was probably about 30 seconds from getting the cuffs put on me until his partner came up and basically dragged him away. He was an older man, probably in his late 50s, and probably didn't want to deal with 2 arrests right at the start of his shift, especially when one of them was obviously going to be more hassle than it was worth. I'm pretty sure he persuaded him out of it, and they left, taking Evelyn away and hopefully out of my life for good. At this point, I'm thinking about if I want to stay here or not. The fact that my parents live a couple of hours away, combined with the thought of about how broke I am going to be in the short term here, ruled out either their place or a hotel, so I just decided to sleep in the guest room. Sarah made some useless efforts to get me to talk to her or to sleep in our bed, but I just told her we'd talk the next day and that I was exhausted and didn't want to be bothered. Thankfully, she left me alone and I slept hard, harder than I had in years, which pretty much catches us up to the last update. But dear friends, let me tell you this, the next day was by far the weirdest effing day of my life. To start with, I woke up at 11 a.m. Sarah was still home. She had cleaned the house from top to bottom. I mean, the floors gleamed, the toilets sparkled. I could lick the linoleum in the bathroom and it'd probably be minty clean. She had obviously been busy, but when she saw me, she sort of stayed out of immediate range. Not quite talking, but looking like she wanted to say something. I get it. Last night was traumatic for everyone, and she was probably unsure. Like, did I just end the wedding in the heat of the moment? Was I serious about this? Was I really mad? I took a deep breath and told her we had to finish talking. She tried to sit next to me on the couch, and I thought about rejecting her, but I didn't. We were not getting married, but I didn't need to act like I despised her, because truthfully, I didn't. I was let down by her, decently repulsed by some of the things I had read in her text exchanges between her sister, but we were both hurting here, and I didn't want to make it any worse, or escalate things to a point where life could get any more complex than it already was. I had to persuade Sarah a lot before she finally accepted that the wedding was off. She was taking it very badly, to say the least. She was a mess. I think she was breathing too fast a few times. I was coping better, but of course this was my decision, and I had more time to deal with it. Then she asked the serious question, what about us? I know I am going to get a lot of backlash from people for this, especially the kind of my listeners that think every mistake in a relationship is a reason to blow it up. And indeed, one could even say that my canceling the wedding was like dropping a huge bomb on our 6-year relationship, but honestly, I didn't have an answer for Sarah in that moment. I just didn't know, and I told her so. I said I saw all those text messages, and they revealed a part of her that I didn't know existed, and that I wasn't sure about her or our relationship anymore. I said I couldn't comprehend why she would agree with Evelyn insulting Marty and joining in, and even encouraging her to cheat on not only him, but their daughter too. She just kept saying, I know, it was wrong, I know. I asked her for a reason, but she couldn't give me one. She just said that she lost control and that she had to support her sister. I told her that I thought a good sister was someone who kept you honest and didn't let you be a jerk. She agreed with me and said that she would do better, but that Evelyn had always been the leader when they were kids, and she was always the follower. I understand this. I have an older sibling too, and while I'm a bit more independent, I also spent the last 18 years of my life with him living on the other side of the world, except for the rare, occasional visit around Thanksgiving or Christmas. But still, maybe I had an advantage over Sarah because my older sibling was a good guy while Evelyn was a scumbag. Now, here's where I get the second major FENG shock of my life in like 48 hours. Sarah says to me, "It's not fair. It's not fair." What's not fair? I ask her. You were sending inappropriate messages to that woman Mandy on Instagram last year, and I forgave you. I was so hurt, but I forgave you. Why can't you forgive me? Why? What? What the hell is she talking about? Who is this bimbo wife Mandy? Like I have no effing clue. I ask her if she was high or having a mental breakdown. Like, okay, that was harsh of me, but I have absolutely not been doing cyber sex or sexting or whatever with anyone, especially not some Instagram girl. I'm shouting back at her with all my might, and Sarah is crying and screaming at me, saying that she saw the text last year and that she chose to not say anything because I had ended it. Apparently, she had been snooping on my socials from my home computer when I am at work, which should have been really dull because I have only family and a few work friends on there. I try to explain this to her, offering to let her sign into all my accounts and see for herself, but she called me a cheat, a scumbag, and many other names. She starts hurling stuff at me, and so things are getting out of control, and I tell her that if she throws one more thing, I'll have her kicked out of this house just like her sister. She curses at me and storms off to the master bedroom and slams the door. Now, at this point, I am so freaking confused, I barely know what to do. I head into my office, turn on my desktop, and type "Bimbo Wife Mandy" into Google. Sure enough, there is an Instagram, a Twitter, a Reddit even, and of course an OnlyFans. I click on one of the Instagram links, and up comes a post of an, extremely busty woman, like clearly defying the laws of nature and science, and oh, guess where she's from? Australia. Well, everyone, remember all the nice stuff I was saying about my brother? Guess who was staying with us last Christmas all the way from Australia? Guess who I told, sure, go ahead and use my office computer to play games if you have jet lag? As far as I can tell, my brother, after his wife and kids went to sleep, logged into either Insta or UF or something, and was probably paying money to sext with this girl. What a great thing guy. Now, I would love to call my brother and not only confirm my suspicions, but also give him a goddamn earful. But it's like 2 or 3 in the morning there, so it's gonna have to wait. But I am crawling the walls here trying to sort out how I feel about everything. I feel totally let down by everyone. I wonder, what kind of world are we living in? I briefly try to make sense of how Sarah's reaction to my brother's deed and her own affair with Evelyn are related, but it doesn't add up. Maybe she's more lenient or forgiving than I am, which is why she never confronted me when she saw this. But I wish she did. It would have let me share my views on these things and show her how I would behave. It might have swayed her for the better later on, or maybe not. Who knows? All I know is that this post is getting too long, and I have wasted most of the morning when I should be working to get this off my chest and on this page. I feel a bit relieved for doing it, but there is still more to tell. Probably another 2 or 3 posts. I won't post them to this subreddit anymore. I doubt they would allow me, but I will try to discreetly update my profile in the next couple of days with the rest of the drama, talking to my brother, talking to my parents and Sarah's parents, and finally where Sarah and I are at. One thing that I can say though is it seems like most of my close family relationships are very tense for various reasons. My parents are mostly supportive, but that's fading now that the financial loss is sinking in. Yes, the wedding is still off. That was pretty much a given from the start. Sarah's parents are more angry, and I bet they are cursing me with voodoo dolls right now. Evelyn, for those who are curious, is out of jail. She got Sarah to bail her out, and I gave Sarah a piece of my mind for that, calling her sister's lackey, which I think actually hit a nerve with her because she wrote me a long letter about how her sister always bossed her around since they were kids. I've read it twice now, and I wish we had discussed this at any point in the last 6 years. Maybe things would be different. I don't know. So viewer, if anyone still cares, look out for the last part of this story in a couple of days, and maybe an update after the day that was supposed to be our wedding. Note, Bimbo Wife Mandy makes an appearance in the comments. Update. It took me longer than I expected to write this update. A lot of things have been going on in the past few days that have kept me occupied, and I only had some spare time after lunch today to sit down and get this done. I'll try to cover as much as I can. But before that, I just want to address a few things in response to comments from the previous post. I'll try to keep it short. Firstly, I'm not really up to date on Marty and his divorce, except that as far as I know, he's still leaving her. No papers or anything, but the decision is made. Besides, I'm not in a place to be telling Marty what to do, or giving him legal advice, or helping him with anything to do with the other guy, or finding the other guy's wife, etc. Marty is an adult, and he can handle the situation however he wants, and my role, as his friend, is just to back him up and offer advice, if he wants it. Secondly, this is not some kind of stealth promotion for an OnlyFans girl. If it was, I would have done it on the first post, which reached the top of Reddit, and was seen by over 3 million people. Also, since this post got so popular on Reddit, it's not really a shock that Bimbo Wife Mandy, another Redditor, was following the story and saw her name. It could have been any other of the many girls who use Reddit to post their photos. And as a quick note, speaking of Mandy, I have talked to her. She was actually quite useful in confirming something for me. And as a person, she seems quite nice, but Guys, there is no chance of romance here in the future. Mandy is married, apparently very happily so, and for almost 20 years, and honestly, while her husband must be okay with it, she's too much for a simple insurance guy like me to deal with. Really. So, after clearing up a few things, let's move on to the update. The last time I posted, I finished with me thinking that my brother had used my office computer to chat with Mandy, but it was too late to reach him. I'm the kind of guy who needs to work on solving a problem as soon as it arises. This is good for my job, but in situations like this, it only made me more stressed. So, I decided to take a breath, put everything aside for later, and do what I had to do. The first thing was trying to contact everyone from my side that I had invited to the wedding that I hadn't told about its cancellation. As you may remember, I had already told my parents and had them contact my relatives on the day I decided, but only Sarah and I had the full guest list, so I had to do the rest myself. Out of respect for my friends, I decided to call instead of text, but that might have been a mistake since every phone call usually led to a long explanation of why I was calling off the wedding. I know I could have made up some other reason, but I wanted people to know that I wasn't being careless or just feeling something silly like cold feet. It was important, not just for my own image, but I think also to show respect to the people who had agreed to come on that day to support me and Sarah as a couple. Because of this, it was late in the evening when I finally managed to contact everyone, which meant it was now morning time in Australia. I knew what I had to do, but I wanted to make sure that everything was ready, so I took a break and made a sandwich in the kitchen. I noticed that Sarah wasn't home. I had no clue when she left and sat down to eat and think about what to do with my brother's situation. Let's call my brother Carl for the sake of brevity here. Now, Carl and I have always been very close despite him being 13 years older than me. He was like a semi-parental figure in my life because by the time I started to have lasting memories, he was already almost an adult. He was always kind with his time, played with his little brother when other teenagers would probably have shunned such an activity, and generally seemed very grown-up and smart to me growing up. Needless to say, I respected him a lot. The thought of him ting with a girl who was not his wife, in my home, was something that I was still struggling with and I had to figure out what to do. Talking to him about it was clear, but at this point, with my relationship with Sarah in ruins, I didn't know if I cared about making him admit it just to vindicate myself. Was there anything left to save anyway? I had to, for my own dignity, at least scold him about this and persuade him to quit, but I wasn't sure if I was going to expose him or not to my SIL. It all hinged on what he said to me and if I trusted him or not. I finished my meal and logged into Facebook and video called Carl. Now, Carl works mostly from home as a remote office worker since his field is related to IT, and he's almost always available during the day, and today was no exception. It didn't even ring more than once or twice before he answered. We greeted each other, exchanged some pleasantries, and then I just sort of dove into it and asked him if he had been using my computer to have intimate conversations with women on the internet when he was visiting me. Carl's face froze and he leaned over out of frame of the camera. He was obviously closing his office door. "Yeah, I did." "Why?" he said to me. I swore under my breath and explained to Carl how Sarah had thought that his flirting was me since he used my computer. I explained that I wasn't happy to take the hit for him, and I asked him point blank if Karen knew about this or not. He waffled for a few seconds, stumbling over his words, and then looked a bit sheepish and said that no, Karen didn't know, and he'd prefer if it was kept that way. He went on to explain that their relationship had been pretty rough since their youngest was born 4 years ago, mainly in the bedroom department. Carl had always been a pretty private person, especially when it came to intimate details, or at least he had always been that way when talking to his much younger baby brother. However, this time, he just let it all lay out. Things had been bad, he had been tired of getting rejected. Karen was always tired no matter what he did or how much he helped out around the house. Eventually, this led to problems on his side, some sort of performance anxiety on the few occasions where Karen would actually feel up for some bedroom fun, and things just got worse from there. Basically, he said, there's no amount of socks picked up, laundry folded, dishes washed, or time spent minding children that would get me laid. It was just not happening, so I started to spend time in my office at night, working. He even did the finger quotes when saying this. Evidently, his working at night turned into a pretty hardcore addiction to OnlyFans sites, which given the relative privacy he had in his office for legitimate work, spiraled out of control pretty quickly. I asked him if he was still doing it, and he swore up and down that he wasn't. I thought I believed him when he said it. He seemed to be sincere, but I just had this niggling feeling in the back of my skull that something was off. Maybe it was because of all of the deceit I had encountered recently, but I was doubting my own brother, who has really been a stand-up guy to me our entire lives together. I really hated being in this situation. Now, the problem I faced was pretty complex here. First, if I wanted to clear my name, then I would have to get my brother to tell Sarah that it was him all along. However, if he did that, then there was no guarantee that Sarah wouldn't spitefully inform Karen. I personally thought it would be best if Karen knew, but at the same time, I didn't know if I felt comfortable potentially dropping a nuke on my brother's marriage over something he not only said he stopped, but is in this sort of moral gray area for me. I didn't have an answer right away as to what to do, but I did urge him to tell his wife about this and to get into marriage counseling. He said that they actually had been going for the last 6 months, and while it was helpful, what had really helped him was getting a prescription for some generic Viagra. I actually did a spit take at that, neatly spraying my computer screen with water. He told me that they had been trying to make sure they have intimate time at least a couple of times a week, and the Viagra had cured him of his performance anxiety to the point where now they were both looking forward to spending time together after the kids went to bed. The general gist of this was something along the lines of, "Hey, this is actually going in the right direction now. Please don't screw this up for us." I was in a terrible dilemma, not only for Carl and Karen's sake, but also for my 2 little nieces. And if Carl was being honest with me, I could be ruining a marriage that was beginning to heal. The outcome was uncertain. So yeah, some people might not like it, but I decided to hold off for now. I was going to see him in person in a couple of weeks anyway, and once I got him in a room with some booze, I would definitely find out the truth. That seemed like the best plan. That night, I hit the sack early. I didn't run into Sarah until the next morning. She looked worn out, like she had barely slept. I asked her what she had been up to, out of habit, since we had been a couple for almost 6 years. She said that she had gone to the courthouse to bail out Evelyn and then drove her to her parents' place and stayed over. She made sure to tell me how awful it was to have to break the news to her parents that I had called off the wedding. I asked her if her parents knew why, and she snapped, "Of course they do!" I tried to keep my cool, but I was at the end of my rope by then. I snapped back at her. "Are you planning to move back there so they can have both daughters under their roof again?" It was immature and mean, but the fact that she got Evelyn out of jail pissed me off so much. "You don't have to be a jerk about this," she said, to which I said, "And you don't have to be Evelyn's lackey." I saw Sarah wince when I threw that at her. It clearly hit a nerve, and her eyes started to water, and I calmed down. We just stood there, far apart in the living room of our home, and didn't speak for a long while until Sarah broke the silence. "Our parents are coming at 3. I slapped my forehead at this. I wanted to yell at her for not telling me this, but I realized that was just my pride. After all, I had to sit with them and sort out the details of the wedding and whatever deposit we had left, and I had to at least once face-to-face tell them all why it was off. So fine, let's get this over with. I tried to keep myself occupied, but there's not much you can do on a Sunday except kill time, and killing time is not very fun when you know you're going into the fire in a few hours. Still, 3 p.m. arrived and so did our parents. We all gathered at the big kitchen table that Sarah had gotten just a month after we bought the house. It was used from Facebook Marketplace, but she adored it because it was solid oak with a nice finish and could fit 8. She always dreamed of having large dinner parties with our families over, just not like this. The next 3 hours were brutal. No one was pleased, nor should they be, I suppose. The best backing I could get came unsurprisingly from my own parents, but even that was mild. Basically along the lines of, well, it's his choice to make, which more or less means, yeah, we think this is nuts too, but we're still supporting him. Honestly, that was okay with me. I didn't want my parents to get the blame by association of canceling the wedding. I was okay with taking that. Eventually, we agreed on a fair deal in regards to the wedding. We would try to get back whatever money we could, split it back however it was paid, and then share whatever losses there were together. However, when it came to the matter of the house, Sarah strongly opposed my idea of paying back her or her parents for the deposit. Basically, she wasn't planning to move. As you can guess, Sarah and I hadn't really discussed the us living together issue in much depth. The fact that I even mentioned sorting out the house equity surprised her because the implication here is that I want her to move out of our place. She freaked out, and I don't fault her. I should have cleared up our relationship status with her first, before trying to work out a payment plan with her parents. It really revealed to everyone how I felt about our relationship, and while I think our parents saw it coming, or at least got it, Sarah was devastated. She was totally not okay with us splitting up over this, and she made it obvious. "I am not leaving my house and we are not breaking up," she stated. And that's pretty much how my Sunday night wrapped up. After our parents left, Sarah and I tried to talk it over some more, but we kept going in circles around each other, and I had to restrain my natural urge to chase her down until we got a solution. Honestly, I was pretty damn exhausted as well, and I just wanted to shut off my mind. Surprisingly, we just ended up sitting on the couch and watching a movie together in silence until it was time to hit the hay. We left it there with a, "We'll talk about it more tomorrow," and went to our separate rooms. On Monday, I woke up to a big handwritten letter slid under the door from Sarah. I glanced at the first few pages and decided I would handle it later and went to work. When I left, Sarah was still in bed. She must have been up late writing that letter. At work, I rearranged some meetings and started calling venues and vendors that were on my list. It was a mixed bag of outcomes. The catering people insisted that I pay most of their fees under the excuse that they had ordered most of the food. I fired back at them over this. Like, were they planning to feed me a week-old steak? But my plea fell on deaf ears. I tried talking to the woman who ran the catering business and explaining what happened, but that seemed to only strengthen her resolve to get as much money as possible out of me. Conversely, the DJ that I had booked for the entertainment was incredibly nice and gave us back almost all of the money. Things went on like this, and during the day between making calls and doing work, I read Sarah's letter. Now, this is 20 pages of handwriting, so I'm just going to give you the main points. The bottom line was that, ever since she was a kid, Sarah has been tormented by Evelyn, and in response, Sarah's way of coping with this was to basically go along with whatever Evelyn wants or expects to hear. She said that it had become kind of a general mode of living in her life, that she was just scared to upset anyone, to create a problem, or sometimes even to express an opinion. I thought about this because honestly, when I look back at our relationship with a more critical eye, I kind of feel that Sarah was a bit too flawless of a girlfriend. What I mean by that is, she never argued with me, never chose her plans over mine, or even really pushed back too hard against anything I wanted to do. She went out of her way to make herself seem helpful and all around acted more or less like a yes woman in our relationship. I mean, we had never even had a small disagreement in 6 years, let alone a big fight until now. It sounds great from a relationship standpoint, until of course it's not. I couldn't get rid of this feeling that Sarah has this deep-rooted insecurity and need to please people. You know what they call people-pleasing behavior. When I start looking at it this way, a lot of things make sense to me, and I start to realize that despite being with Sarah for 6 years, I don't really know her that well. It's like she's put up this image around her, which is really just a mirror, a reflection of whatever she thinks people want to see. And in the case of our relationship, she's more or less been playing my role of the perfect girlfriend, while never really letting me in to see who she is as a person. Hell, I can't even say that what I saw in those text messages is the real Sarah, because it's almost certainly just another reflection, this time of Evelyn and all her flaws and faults. This might sound strange, but it's like we are in this unequal relationship, whereas maybe she loves me for who I am and how I show my thoughts on my face and my heart on my sleeve, but maybe I only love her for the mirror she is holding up to my face. I don't know. If this sounds too abstract for you, then I'm right there as well. It's like this hint of an idea that I'm still trying to grasp by my fingertips. All I know is that in the last few days, I've probably learned more about Sarah than I had in the last 6 years, and the letter she wrote me was the first real glimpse into her childhood that I had seen. That night, we talked more about this specifically, about her childhood, about her behavior. The conclusion that we reached is that she needs help. She's a grown woman who is sadly stuck acting like a child, too afraid to disappoint anyone, lest she face her sister's fury, or her parents' disapproval, or the loss of love from the ones she loves. This is no way to have a relationship, and I can say that I feel much more confident and certain that my decision to call off the wedding was the right one. In fact, it could not be any more right. That night, after our talk, I went to bed with much less anxiety than I had in a few days.